It all started when I received a frantic call from my property manager. My rental cabin, a cozy lakeside getaway that I had legally leased to paying guests, was suddenly occupied by none other than HOA Karen's son. Apparently, she had decided to gift him the cabin for a weekend stay, assuming her HOA influence gave her carte blanche. When I arrived at the property, I found Karen standing on the deck, arms crossed, looking as self-righteous as ever. "I gave it to my son," she announced. "He deserves a weekend here, and technically, I oversee HOA approvals." I blinked. "This is private property, Karen. You do not have the authority to give it away." Her son stood nearby, looking guilty and confused. "Mom said it was fine," he murmured. Karen waved a dismissive hand. "I'm just helping. You're so uptight." I sighed, realizing words alone wouldn't suffice. Karen's entitlement required a lesson she could see. Literally. I had recently installed a steel fence along the edge of my property line, and inspiration struck. The next morning, while Karen was busy at her company's head office a few miles away, I had a crew bring in modular steel fencing panels and began assembling them strategically. The fence extended from my property boundary, running straight in a direct line to her company's front doors. It wasn't illegal, everything remained on my land, but the visual impact was impossible to ignore. By mid-afternoon, anyone driving up to her office would see a gleaming steel barrier pointing directly at the building, a bold and inescapable reminder of boundaries. When Karen returned to the cabin later that day, she froze. Her son looked bewildered. What is this?" she demanded. I walked calmly toward the fence, gesturing along its entire length. "Your son may have temporarily occupied my cabin, but you clearly needed a visual lesson in private property. Consider this a permanent reminder of where my boundaries end and where yours begin." Karen fumed. She pulled out her phone to call the HOA board, muttering about harassment and illegal obstruction. But everyone on the line could see the fence for themselves. Even the HOA officers, who had tolerated her antics before, shook their heads. This was entirely on Karen, her assumptions, her entitlement, her refusal to respect legal property lines. By the next morning, the story had spread through the neighborhood. Karen's office staff whispered about the fence pointed directly at headquarters, while neighbors admired the audacity of a property owner taking control. Karen tried to escalate, but the paperwork was airtight, the property lines clear, and the steel fence was fully legal. Her son never returned to my cabin without permission, and Karen herself stopped showing up at my property. Every time she glanced at the fence from her office windows, she recoiled, reminded that authority ends where the law begins. From that day forward, my rental cabin remained private, my guests undisturbed, and Karen learned a lesson the hard way. Entitlement does not override ownership. Sometimes you have to build the line literally before it's respected. And me? I polished the fence one afternoon, watching the sunlight glint off the steel, quietly satisfied. Boundaries, it turns out, are best taught with a combination of planning, precision, and a little steel.